It's time for All Things Racing and Jesus with your hosts, Daniel Hillian and Mitch Reynolds.
Hey, that's right. This is episode 43, part 4 of our Racing Life series. And we've got a great episode lined up for you today. But as always, I want to bring in my man across the table, Mitchell the Rocket Reynolds. How you doing, Mitch?
Doing well, Super D. Glad to be here. Looking forward to installment number 4 of An ATV Racing Life with Mr. Shawn Robinson, Marketing Director for the NE-EDT Championship Series and photographer, media man with EDT Racing Channel. Man, just kind of a do-it-all guy who we've really just seen build this NE-EDT to what a great series.
Yeah, so they've brought on a lot of cool sponsors, you know, kind of outside the industry sponsors. And as always, we want to give it up to the folks that make it happen for us. So right off the top, 88 Live to Ride, RJR, they're kicking off the GNCC season this past weekend. So it'll be cool to follow up with all them and see how that's going down. Phoenix Handlebars, you can use our code RITR15 to save a little bit there on some top-notch handlebars that are being run in supercross and motocross on both four-wheelers and dirt bikes. B&B Power Sports, Mr. Frank Batista over there would love to do some motor work for you, so check him out on all the social platforms. 110% nutrition, you can use our code REMAIN at checkout. And then All Terrain Motorsports, Mr. Kevin Allen Cleveland over there doing all the things that he does. So thank you to all the people that make it happen for us. And I'm excited to get into this with Shawn because he's kind of taken a little bit different approach than just the standard race promoter, because that's
definitely
and he'll get into that and share a little bit of kind of the, probably not everything behind the curtain, but just of what has made the NE-EDT series really successful.
Yeah, and it is a unique approach, but definitely a very good business philosophy. So I look forward to hearing about that, as well as his story with his boys. It's really cool to hear how really racing connects them, how he'll explain how racing is that escape, if you will. Yeah. It's the thing that he does, and obviously he commits a whole lot of time to it. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But Super D, before we get into today's interview, I want to talk back to the first few installments, and let's highlight kind of the things, the journey we've been on so far, and the things that we've learned. You know, in installment number 1, we had Toby from Renegade, and it's just really cool to hear how this race fuel that he produces all started from a point of like, I'm going to be a renegade, right? I don't agree with this price gouging that's taking place. And ultimately, because he said, I too was a grassroots racer. Like he has his company established around taking care of people because he can remember what it was like to be that consumer, that person that just did it on the weekend, right? Yeah. What highlights do you have from it, Super D?
Man, I loved him sharing about that too, and that him and his dad we're making this fuel for other, big name companies, and just like you're saying, they're charging these companies X amount of dollars to produce the fuel, and then they go and try to buy their own fuel, and the price has just gone through the roof, and they're like, no, we're not going to stand for that. And so I love that part of it. I tell you what, I really enjoyed our most recent one with Brandon Hogue and Jeffrey Rastrelli, and again, sorry, we had a little technical stuff. That's on my end. It's my fault. I didn't push the right button, but still, man, just to hear them share about it, and I know you got some responses. I did as well, of people just going, man, that was awesome. Yeah. Just to hear about their day-to-day life and the unique things that they found that, number one, they enjoy, but two, that they're able to do and make income for their families,
Absolutely. I mean, they have to get creative in how they're doing it, but I mean, just the skill that they have to fulfill all those roles as well as being the professional athlete is really cool. Yeah. But just unique in our sport in that, these top guys are giving each other's playbook. Like they're working every little detail together is incredible. And I think I said something about, that they're working their machines together. That's not true. I don't know where that came from. Right. But from the athlete part, like tuning the athlete they're sharing every bit of that together, and that has got to be unique to this sport. But stepping back to that one with Toby, you said him and his father, that family dynamic. You know, you see that with Jeffrey. It's a generational racing thing. So it's families getting together and going to the races, and they share it with their kids and their kids' kids, and it's a passion that they all have. And we see kind of that reoccurring theme with passion too. Frank talked about the passion for it, the passion to drive 40-plus hours for a weekend event.
No kidding. Wow.
And then to continue in the business by creating engines. It's just really cool. It's you know, I think that's what makes this sport unique is once you're in it for life, really.
Yeah. I mean, people like we were in it full throttle 20 years ago, and then, kind of slowly faded out, and then, have come back with a vengeance here, with the pod and riding a little bit, and just, my shop that's full of machines now, which is super cool. But it's just one of those things, when you're in, you're in.
It's true.
And I've had friends and people along the way that they'll go through a season where it just maybe things didn't go the way they wanted it to, and they're just done. I mean, DUN, done. That's right. But then, a little time will pass, and they'll realize, man, I was frustrated because of this situation, or whatever it may be. And they'll kind of, they may not get back into it full throttle, but they'll follow the series and keep up with it. They're still just kind of an outside fan, and I really like that about the sport. But you look at Toby with his dad, Frank with his dad, both the guys we talked to last time, you and your dad, me and my dad, and now your kids have dabbled in it a little bit. Cooper asked me the other day, he said, "Hey man, when's our first race?" He's been wanting to ride a lot here lately, but it's just been so stinking muddy, and then it'll be like, okay, we can go out there. Well, then it'll start raining, or it'll be like, okay, let's go. Well, it's 4 degrees outside. It's just the weather has been all over the place, but it is really neat how racing, I guess it's one of those things that can either bring families together or drive them apart. There's not really a middle ground there,
Well, because you're going to spend a lot of time together one way or the other.
One way or the other.
It's going to be in the shop working. It's going to be traveling. It's going to be spending the weekend together. It is super, 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 super cool.
Yeah, but it's special, and that's one of the things that I've got to share with some of, our friends that are not neck deep into this whole thing like we are, that my dad, myself, and Cooper, we can all go and race the same track. Like what other outside sport can 3 generations do the same thing in the same area and all have a good time, Absolutely. And then on the way home, or as we're, sitting out at the trailer having a turkey sandwich or something, we can talk, well, hey, how'd you go through that corner? Well, I did it like this. Okay, well, try, as I'm going around the track, Dad can stand there with Cooper and say, hey, you need to do it like this, or I can teach, so it's really, really, really a cool thing. And you're getting to hear that through all these different, through a fuel guy, an engine builder, and then professional guys, that are doing it day in and day out. And it's just something that they love and they're interested in. And it's exciting to be able to share their stories. I mean, that's kind of what we're about here, and getting to hear all the ins and outs of what they've got going on. So
the passion, the drive, the commitment. And even like us guys, that were out of it for a little bit. We were young, we were younger when we got out.
We had no idea.
But it came back alive in us, right? I mean, in an instant.
No kidding.
That's for sure.
I mean, you've got a really nice hybrid machine sitting in your garage that takes a lot of time and energy to put one of those together. And I should have mine together here in the next couple weeks or so,
all right.
And just all the time and the energy and what it takes to put a top tier program together. I mean, you're touching every bolt on that machine once, twice, making sure everything.
And then after you ride, you're touching it again. And then that second, third time, like you got to do the shakedown, make sure she's ready to go. So.
So if I could give any young guys out there, a little encouragement, it would be, I remember when I was younger, I didn't have a job. I worked for my grandparents had cattle and tractors and all those things. So you work around the farm, it's just kind of how it was. I wasn't out.
Duties, but you didn't have a 9 to 5. Yeah.
Right. But I knew like, hey, when we get home from a race, like I love to clean and wash. So I'll clean all the 4-wheelers. I'll do all the air filters, I'll change all the oil, that stuff that I could do that cost $0. And, so if I could be an encouragement to any of the younger guys out there, hey, during the week when mom and dad are at work, you can get out there with the pressure washer or just the water hose and have them take you to O'Reilly's or AutoZone or your local parts store or Walmart, get all kinds of goofy brushes and get you some Simple Green or Mean Green or whatever cleaner you
Simple
want.
Green's definitely the best one.
Yeah, absolutely. And it smells good too.
Yeah.
And just make that, that's your role. Get you some WD-40. That way when you get everything cleaned off, hit
or
those
some good Maxima SC1.
Yes. Yeah. Keep it clean, keep stuff lubed up a little bit. But those are all little things that, and then you get to realize, what it takes to run a program at the top level. Like it takes a lot of time, some Loctite and get you some wrenches. That way you can check all the bolts and stuff. Just little things like that. That way you're helping prevent a mechanical down the road. And those are all things that, the younger ones, you can do that, now
you're learning life skills. Like if you look back at all the life skills that you obtained through racing, that responsibility of taking care of something and keeping it going and filling your role, helping your dad get ready to go to the races, loading up, working on the machine. Those are all good life skills that maybe at the moment you're like, I got to go do this. But over time, you kind of look back. You and I can look in the rear view and we can appreciate those times and the discipline we learned. The skills that we obtained, being able to work on small engine stuff and figuring out how to problem solve and doing all these things. There's just a lot of great benefit of doing things together, learning. And that's, as I'm speaking that, I'm like, I need to get out there more and work with Ryder. We work on his dirt bike every once in a while, but there's great skills to be learned out in the shop, off the racetrack as well. So
how does it handle? Is it pulling to one way? Is the motor making weird noises? All those little things that you can help prevent a catastrophe later on down the road. So. Well, tell you what, man, we've got Shawn queued up on the line here. So how about we bring him on?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, hey, y'all stick with us, and we'll be right back with Shawn Robinson.
I want to welcome in Mr. Shawn Robinson from Pennsylvania. He is the marketing director for the NE-EDT Championship Series, as well as the photographer and media man with EDT Racing Channel. He's a man of many hats. He's also races the adult 90 class and is an ATV racing enthusiast. Shawn, welcome in. Tell us about yourself, man.
Well, I come out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Grew up on dirt bikes, so wasn't really a quad guy. And then actually, when I got out of college, my friend talked me into quads, but I was in GNCC motocross and kind of did it that way. And then he had a family, and that was the end of quad racing, quad riding and quad racing for a couple of years. And then what happened is my buddy called me. He said, "Hey, I got this. I bought another quad. I'm getting back into it. You want to check it out?" So he said, "I'm traveling this track called Path Valley." And Path Valley was an AMA track. They ran circle track and TT. And some of the bigger riders at that time, back in the 2000s, actually raced at that track. So he took me there. I said, "We'll drive. I'll go with you, see what this is all about." So went out, watched him race, and actually he wrecked in that race, knocked himself out. The quad flipped, landed on his head, knocked him out cold. And that's how I got to see my first race of TT or flat track racing. And
so
he gets in the
seeing
truck,
your
he's
friend
kind of unconscious a little bit. He said, "What do you think?" I said, "Dude, I think I'm going to buy myself a quad."
Yeah, I got to get into
at
this.
That time, the Banshees were the king. 250Rs, they were just starting the hybrids. You've seen those coming in. So that's where I got my first connection with TT and flat track racing.
Just saw my buddy get knocked out, so definitely want to get in on this. Yeah.
I say we're not the smartest guys that race ATVs. So
that's what Super D kind of shared that on the last episode with Jeffrey and Brandon. He said, you got to have a few screws loose to do this, honestly, but good people nonetheless. But few screws loose upstairs. So, all right. So that introduces you into the racing world. Fast forward just a little bit for us, Shawn. So your sons, Kyler and Cody, Kyler participates as well in the upper ranks of the EDT racing world, but kind of introduce us to the story with Kyler and tell us how that all came about.
So what had happened with racing, I started racing, started doing the nationals, and it was around, stopped doing like the local stuff and started being introduced like early 2000, 1, 2, 3, 4. And in 5, I started getting pretty good, where I was able to run towards the top of the class, say in B class. Wasn't, I'm not the top tier, but I ended up, getting ready for a race. I was leading a race and I got hit and wrecked and I ended up breaking both my arms and broke a hip bone, finger bone. And, you go to the ER and the doctor says, you're pretty screwed up. Needless to say, with work, not able to work. And you drive a car, they kind of frown on having 2 broken arms.
Right.
So you're kind of done racing. You're kind of done in everything. So up to that point, me and my wife had tried to have kids. There was a lot of complications and we weren't able to have any children. And that wreck, that summer, a foster care adoption agency moved into the town we were at. And you just go for walks. I learned to do walks every day, just keep myself active because you couldn't really go any. And I saw this place and it took about a week. And I said, I'm going to walk inside. And I sat down and I talked to them. And then later we talked to my wife, and that was in the summer. And by November that year, that's when Kyler and Cody moved in under foster care. They were 4 and 5 at the time. We were their 10th family, just to show you they had they were bounced around a lot. So from there, trying to build a relationship with those kids and see what helps. So with Cody was we got him out going into sports and actually very good. So we were playing everything. We tried everything with him. And with Kyler, just for example, we're trying every sport we can, from wrestling to baseball, just to kind of get those kids integrated into something where they can belong and be a part of. And with Kyler, for an example, we're playing soccer. So he walks up to me in the middle of the game and he says, hey, what's this on my forehead? And I said, I wiped his head and I said, that's sweat. He said, I don't like that. So we knew we had to get something. And he saw some pictures and videos at that time. And I was pretty much, after that wreck, I was pretty much done with racing. It was pretty significant impact. And you kind of had to make things. But he saw pictures and videos and was intrigued with that. So the next year in July at Pine Lake, at the July race, he was 5 years old. We bought this little in the 2019 at the Pine Lake, the 50th. Actually, there's a post that I did with a picture of him.
Yep.
He was on this little blue 40cc Eton. He wasn't yet. We hadn't adopted. He was in foster care. We really weren't supposed to take him out of state, but we did anyways. We show up at the event, and this kid is focused 100%, and we've never seen this out of him. And so they run this 50 class after the pro race. So lining up is Tim Farr and Shane Hitt, and everybody at that time was racing. He pulls his quad in between Shane Hitt and Tim Farr. He's looking straight down that front straight of Pine Lake. Not even looking at him. Tim and, I remember Tim and Shane turning around like, dude, that kid's ready.
Yeah,
and
here we go.
And it was kind of neat. And I always say it kind of gave him escape. Up to that point in 10 years, the kid flopped around and really what racing had done, and we seen it at that point, was gave him that outlet, a place where he's going to belong. And that's what started him on racing. We found the one thing that he liked. Now, my other son got involved with basketball and other sports, football, played everything, but he really didn't like racing. But that's where Kyler got his start. Then after we adopted him, then we started buying other quads and kind of moved him up to the ranks. We did a lot of motocross at first, more than TT racing. And the one thing I talk about is things always happen for reasons. So that's the one I always go, if I wouldn't have wrecked, I would have never found those kids. Absolutely. I would have never adopted Cody and Kyler.
That's absolutely right.
And racing had done that and opened that door. So with Kyler, we were doing a local motocross, and he wrecked really bad on a motocross. He gets in the truck, he says, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And at the time, we were doing motocross and a little bit of TT because I was good friends with Bud. So I would go to Pine Lake, and maybe they had one in Orville. I think back at the time they used to run Orville a lot. So we'd go there and some other ones that were close by. And he gets in the truck. He says, you know what? I don't want to do this. We're okay. I'm like, all right. I'm not going to force kid. If the kid doesn't want to do something, this isn't about me. And like 2 or 3 days later, talking to my wife, he finally opens up. He goes, I want to do this TT stuff. I don't want to do motocross. I'm like, okay. So that kind of got us, we started moving and started doing the nationals and TT racing about 11, 12, 13. Mm-hmm. And what got me into the series part, you've seen the evolution of where the sport was going. And I knew what it meant to the kid. With Kyler, racing had developed, got him friends. With all their background and growing up, just not to get into the adoption stuff, it's called reactive attachment. So they have a tough time making friends, doing everything. But with racing, it gave him a place where he belonged. Mm-hmm. And what led me into the NE-EDT and that stuff was, I seen where it was going in 11, 12, 13, 14. And TT racing was going down. You can almost see the end of it going. And in about 13, Eric Jennings has started talking to me about, hey, what do you think about doing more of a regional East Coast nationals and stuff like that? And just got the conversation going. And by the end of 13, he asked me to come on and partner with him in 14. And that was our first year. We got along. We started the New East. And it wasn't intended to take over the nationals or do anything. It was just to give another outlet for the sport to go to.
Yeah, kind of like a regional thing, like you mentioned, right, Shawn? Like, hey, we're predominantly going to stay East Coast-ish. Is that correct?
That's exactly it.
And ultimately,
now before that, and I talk about my sons finding a place. I had run the one son was into basketball, so one of those things is I coach a lot of basketball, and you show up those things, and anybody has kids. If you show up enough to the meetings, you end up being on the board. And next thing I knew, I was the director.
Yep.
So I was able to see how an organization, how it worked. And for them, they were going completely the same way. They were overspending and they're raising costs. To do what they wanted to do, they were either in twofold. You either had to raise cost or control the cost. I was able to control the cost with basketball. So it kind of opened my eyes to how to do things as an organization. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what Eric got me in for. He goes, you got to figure this out. How can we get this sport to work? Because it ain't working. So my idea at first was not to run. It was just to be the guy in the background to figure out the financial, the relationships with tracks, with sponsors, with everybody to get this thing to make sense. Mm-hmm. So that was the idea of what I was brought into. I wasn't never supposed to be in the point I was at. So that was the thought process when it's all started back in 14.
And then things start going well. The boys are like, hey, man, we kind of like this flat track thing because there's not people landing on our head like they are in motocross. Mitch and I have this argument pretty regular, Shawn. Yeah. And so kind of take us from there. So you're helping Eric out a little bit, and then he's just like, yep, here's the keys, bud. See ya.
Yeah, and like I'll always get into, it's like things always happen. Like with Kyler, if he won the wreck in the motocross, we probably would have gone to the motocross direction. He kind of liked it more at that time.
Right.
But one big wreck turned it, and the big wreck, when I wrecked, it kind of, not that wrecks are supposed to lead you in the direction you want to go, but it kind of opened up. So we get through 14, and I'll be honest with you, going through the season and seeing things, how they work, I really didn't see, I wasn't sure if I was going to stick around because there was a lot of things that were happening that I didn't like. But what happened at the end of 14, about a week before the banquet, there were some personal things that happened. And I got a call on the Saturday before the banquet. And it was from one of Eric's friends. He says, he's out. He can't help you. Good luck. Basically, that was it. I was on my own. He had some things he had
great.
to deal with.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for that call. Just dump it in your lap. Yeah.
Here I am. I got to set up a banquet. I got to figure out everything. And with that, I started making calls to people. And at that time in 14, Bud was still running the July race. And I'm a good friend with Bud. And some of the things that we had talked about in 14 was, how do you structure this? And he was telling me, he's like, man, the overhead here and what I got to pay out, what I got to do is you're losing money. And then the frustrating part, he tried to generate. The thing is, you always, like any business, you got to generate something. So he had 3-wheelers that came in and really helped out, but they pushed them away. And with pushing them away, he said, this really isn't worth it. And he was really at the point of walking away. And so all that happened at the end of 14, the week before. So Monday I called Bud and I said, this is where we're at. And I don't know. And we probably me and Bud could talk for hours. So we're talking, he's like, so it's just going to be you, right? I said, yeah, just me right now. He's like, how about, and that's where he gave me the July race. He's like, if you move this and you take over that race, I'm in. I'm going to stay in. I said, let's give us a couple years and see what, give it a year. I mean, if it fails, it fails, and you just go make your place a farm. And because that's where he was at. Right. So I had a lot of great people that stepped up. In a week's time, I put a banquet together. I had to find pit bikes because they'd promised pit bikes. I made a conversation with Gear, who does they do like motocross and whatever. I had to make boards for most of them, and forever thankful of Kirby Cook. He made these. I said, what can you do fast? And he made these chain #1 trophies, which were probably one of the best trophies we ever did, and did them all within a couple of days. So a lot of things came together in a very, very short period of time, which kind of led to where we were, where this whole thing started taking off.
Right.
Wow. So Shawn, here you are, just kind of backtracking a little bit. You found a sport that Kyler is in love with, and you're like, all right, we got to keep this thing going. And then you just kind of get thrust into this thing of like, well, this series is trending down. The number of people coming is trending down. People just aren't doing it. We've really got to switch up what we're doing. So you think, well, I'm just stepping in. I'm just going to help out. And then all of a sudden, poured in your lap is like, okay, you're in charge of everything. And because of your relationship with Bud, you're like, okay, I know that this racetrack that he has at Pine Lake is the granddaddy of them all. This is the place that's been running forever. It's where I started racing nationals, which even though it's 16 hours away, I consider it my home track. So many people can call Pine Lake their home. And so you wanted to continue that. So that just kind of drove this passion in you of like, I'm going to keep this thing going regardless. And so kind of explain to us your business philosophy. Like, so you take this thing and you're like, all right, it's got to kind of be turned on its end. Something has to be changed. Obviously, you're a person who can build relationships. I mean, you put a banquet together in a week with a week's notice. You made phone calls. You made the thing happen. And, thankful for Kirby for stepping up and making killer trophies, which, Kirby goes on to win the 50th that you build to at the Legends race. So that's super cool. I was really happy for him. I wanted to beat him, but, super happy for him. So kind of explain to the listeners, like your business philosophy. You're like, I'm totally going to change the direction of this thing. So what'd you do at that point?
So basically at that point, after the banquet, we shut basically the Northeast, or whatever you want to call it, was shut down. I had to separate myself, and it was an individual, and I created an S corp, which is a little different than it's an incorporated business, but I set it up as a marketing company. So there's a whole different philosophy. So the problem at the time with TT racing was let's just say it was top heavy. So, and anybody that understands business, there's risk and reward. The higher your risk is, if you can lower the risk and higher the reward, it becomes you gauge interest. You're starting to get interest.
Right, more people are willing to take the leap and get in on it.
Yeah. Just to give you an example, we go to Muskegon County Speedway, Dresden, and they run a lot of dirt track races.
Yeah.
What they basically explained to me, they really, really like my program because there's a low risk, low reward, low risk and very high reward.
Right.
So like when they run a dirt track, it's the opposite. They said, yes, you can get a very good reward out of it, but they're putting up a buttload of money. and there's a risk that if it fails, they could lose tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, it rains out, or weather comes in, or something. Anything can happen, right?
You don't have spectators, whatever. So what the sport, there was guarantees, and guarantees are always there. My philosophy with those guarantees is actually, like I even help run some businesses on outside of racing, is when you have guarantees, you're setting yourself up sometimes for failure. So,
right. Yeah, absolutely.
I redesigned how we do things and changed it. So actually at that point in the beginning, we had to make it so tracks, the cost of doing a race is very, very expensive. I mean, there's so many underlying costs with insurance and just fuel and everything else to get involved, porta potty. I mean, you could just keep breaking it down and everybody's like, this is a get rich, but it's really not. Like in ambulances can be, just having them on site can be 100 to 200. Now imagine if you do a 2-day program, you're at 12-hour days at $100 an hour. That's significant money.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you can't, that's one of those things, like you can't just be like, oh, we're not going to have an ambulance here. Like that's an absolute must. Right.
So it was kind of redeveloped that. And at that point, tracks like Kinston, who was running national, they were running the AMAs. They switched over to us because the program was better and it was less risk reward, stuff like that. And then like Busco, they were running nationals at that point. And I can't ever thank the Pritchard family. Kyle came in and really, jumped aboard the train, understood what we were doing, and really, really supported it and backed us back then. So I can't say enough about that family. So what we did is we kind of changed the philosophy of marketing and stuff like that, how we did it. So I'm generally, the series was designed as a product. I bring the product to the track and the track sells it, basically.
Right.
They keep a lot of the money. So a lot of on our side is sponsor driven. That's how we keep afloat. Versus when we go to an event, like pit passes, optional practice, they all retain that to really cover their costs. And the idea with entries is you kind of use the interest to pay us, cover trophies, cover the purses. So the risk is a lot lower. That's why like purses, if you see my purses, they're a lot different than what they have ever done because they're built on the more riders there is, the higher the purse goes.
Right.
So, and pro would be the first one. It's like a match. For every dollar they pay, you match the dollar. So the risk was, you lower the risk for them. And then I was able to bring in outside, really sell sponsors to help cover that, like whole shots and stuff like that, bring in outside vendors, which is a lot of work in the off season and during the season, keep those, but generate those funds to help offset, the payouts and stuff like that to make it really good. So that's the concept of what I did versus what a lot of racing series do. They'll come in and they run a race. You rent the track, you give such and such a money, and then they keep the info. So on that side, it can work. It's just a different philosophy. So, our side, the idea was to make the tracks really generate money. So they really want to do, that's why our tracks are, I think, putting up an incredible product,
Yeah, you've got them invested. If you get someone to buy into your philosophy and have part in it, rather than just providing a place for you, it's going to make it even better because they're going to promote that. They're going to make the event bigger and better. So, what a great philosophy.
And they can generate income. And when they're able to generate income, they want to keep this. And I tell them the same thing. I said, you've got to have a good product. That's it. How many times has Bud reinvented that track in the past 10 years?
Oh, yeah.
Every time.
If it's not good enough, he's ripping apart. And to rip apart that track and build that track, I can't even tell you the man hours and fuel that he's spending and time. I mean, he's spending months, weeks and weeks and weekend, every weekend shot. He's not, that's all he's doing just to get it better. I think this past season was probably one of the better. And I said, you know what? You can kind of leave this one go. He's like, yeah, I think this is pretty good, but he'll build a track. And if he doesn't like it, he'll put in the time because now he's invested where before he didn't care. He's like, you know what?
Yeah.
I ain't making any money. Why am I killing myself?
Yeah. Well, as I think about growing up, Shawn, the things that I had to work for, I always value so much more than something that was just given to me. Now, that's not in every situation, but the things that I've had, had skin in the game, it just means a little bit more. So I love what you kind of this approach you've taken to where you're saying, look, this is what I'm going to do on my end, and here's like the kind of the base layer of potential financial gain you can have from hosting one of these events. Now, if you go outside and say you do offer that extra practice, or you do offer this, or if you bring other things to it and put out a good product, like it's gonna the risk reward, you're gonna have to invest a little more of time and energy and water and fuel, but there's also a higher potential to make that reward too. So I mean, it's again, risk reward, but it's a pretty solid business model. And what's cool is you've seen over the last, realistically, Shawn, we're looking at coming up on 10 years here of this approach, and you see the sport really on the East Coast start to grow. To where, your local race, there's the East Coast Series, there's the NE Series, and then there's a couple of tracks that have their own track championships, if you wanted to, in North Carolina, Tennessee, right up that East Coast there, you could race probably every weekend if you really, really wanted to, and that's the sign that the sport's growing and it's healthy, man, that there's enough interest to keep that many different places going. I love it, man.
So I want to go with one other thing here. So the business philosophy is perfect in what you're presenting to these tracks and getting them invested, and that they have actually skin in the game, if you will. Yeah. But the other thing you mentioned was, the sport at that time was top heavy, meaning everything was kind of focused on paying back to the pro rider. But we know that that's not the majority of our numbers. The majority of our numbers in this sport are youth, are amateur, are women's riders. That makes up a majority of the classes. Now, some of these individuals are building to become a pro one day, but the sport is really built and founded on that. And we talk about the community and family of racing. That was ultimately kind of where you switched your focus. It's not that you don't give back to the pros. You have a hierarchy or a structure that it pays to be a pro, yes, but that really highlights and focuses on these youth, amateur, and women. So kind of explain to us your thought process and how you go about promoting what this sport is all about, rather than just the professional athlete, the weekend warrior, the grassroots racer, as it's been put.
So basically what I did with that approach was, like at the beginning, guys would reach out, they're like, you got to do AMA. You got to join the AMA because they have the platform. I said, that's all marketing. That's name branding. Right. So the idea and concept is, if you say something over and over and over again, if you market it properly and reach a broad audience, you can change the name branding. So everybody believes that they needed the AMA at that time. Mm-hmm. Well, I look at it as like, that's a great organization. I have nothing bad against, they do great stuff for ATV, but what were they going to offer us back? So if we're paying the money, what are they going to give back? So if I'm requiring someone to have a membership, and at that time, I didn't see any really payback. So the idea and concept when I first started was like, let's create a platform and market. Because that's one of the other things I saw. I can tell you, I had a conversation with, like, not to pick on someone, Elka, back in 2013, and they said they weren't invested. The problem with sponsoring the sport was, okay, they'll help the pro rider, but the most important thing is for that pro rider is who's buying that product. He's supposed to be marketing, but if you don't have an amateur and youth base that are buying the product, as a business, you need to sell product in order to make money. It's that simple. Yeah, whatever you do. Yeah. You open a restaurant, if you don't have people coming in to buy your food, you're not going to succeed. Mm-hmm. So my philosophy in all this was like, okay, we got to create a platform that really supports the people that are really, really supporting this racing. That's your amateur and youth. And I'll say to this day, they are the most important aspect of racing. So the way I look at it is like, okay, how can we make it affordable? So I try to contain costs as much as I can. I look at costs, and I don't just pick a pit pass fee out of the air. We break it all down. Do I see where can this work? that the track's able to create revenue plus cover costs, and lower that that risk. Entries and stuff, what's going to cover it? Because there's you bring in officials and awards, which has gotten stupid expensive, and purses and stuff like that. And travel, the most important thing with racing, that's the biggest cost, is travel and fuel, and making it so people can go to a race and not use up all their vacation time. Like you said, you live in Arkansas. How far of a drive was that to Pine Lake?
It's 15, 16 hours, yeah.
So you're leaving Thursday.
Oh, yeah.
To come to a race for Saturday, just to make. And so you're using Thursday, Friday, and then that race is Saturday and Sunday. So you're using, 3 days of vacation? Because you're traveling back home on Monday.
Yes.
Yep.
So people have 2 weeks of vacation. They just ate up 3 of those 10 days. So they're back to 7. Of course, some people get more who have businesses, but I always look to it's the working class is the one supporting it. So keeping those travels within, I always say a circle where we're at. Can someone make it within a day? So that's why we don't run a race on Saturday and Sunday. When we do that, it's like Michigan, it's a holiday, so Monday's off. Right. So I always say we use Saturday and then Sunday's a travel. So in theory, someone's only using 1 vacation day.
Yeah.
So the concept was like, let's make it affordable for them and create that. And that's where it really, I thought, helped build the sport, because it brought in people, they can afford it, they can come to it. It's low, and they can come to a national race within a reasonable distance and build it from there. And the idea with the pros is, I always say, it's like NASCAR racing. Sometimes the guys who make the biggest revenues aren't your winners, aren't your champions. They utilize the platform that you're given. I mean, you were talking with, I heard one of your podcasts where some of the racers, the pro guys are talking, they create businesses off the.
Correct. Yeah, that's for Shirley. Yeah, he was talking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're able to generate income and make a living out of this. You've got to be able to put into work. And my job as a series is how I looked at it, is I got to create this platform. So that was my main focus in the first year. And that's where the EDT channel came from, and everything else, and just building that market.
So expound a little bit on EDT Racing Channel for those people who maybe don't know about what you're doing there. Yeah.
So we created that. And then like where Eric came in, Eric was doing some stuff for like Chucky Creech. They were doing live events with Chucky under the CCR page. I said, listen, I got a bigger platform that's reaching a lot. Why don't we start doing it live here? I said, you're already doing it live. Just do it here and see it. And then it kind of took off. And he started doing it live, and it really turned into almost like a job for him at the track. I say sometimes, I said, you don't have to put all the heat races on there. Just get the main, just to give him a break.
Not Eric.
No. He's going to hold his arm up there all day. Yeah,
he's going to marinate in the sun all day holding that phone. That's for sure.
Yeah. And what's really cool with that is we had a pro practice at Pine Lake, had 25,000 views. Wow. People watching a pro practice.
Yeah, man.
That's bringing a whole year. So you're recreating the market that's there, and now we're starting to get vendors. We'll get into it a little bit later, but some get, people are now that weren't 10 years ago taking it seriously are. So we're able to, maybe get some backing that we weren't able to. So that, like everybody sees we do the whole shot program. Everybody, every class, every payout class, points class, youth, amateur, and pro has a whole shot award, and that's all sponsor based. So if you're racing C class and you can get the whole shot, you're going to get $40, which is your entry fee. So you can generally race for free if all you have to do is get the entry, and that's every class across the board. So it's a pretty neat program, and it's all sponsor driven. These are guys are supporting us because they see where we're going. They see the market that they can jump on. So it just took a different approach to how to do this racing stuff, to open us up to other markets.
And if you look at it like your classic pie chart, if there's only so much of the pie, right, Shawn? And so it's like, hey, I can take half of that pie and give it to 2 classes, and then divide up what's left, or I can divide up and try to spread it a little more evenly. Maybe your your higher, more skilled level classes, they can get, a $50 whole show or however you've got it broken out. But I love that you're able to give a little something all the way down to like the youth guys, because, you think about a 10-year-old getting the whole shot. He's like, I got $40, like that means a lot, and being able to hold that big card there and get your picture taken, like, man, that means a lot. And then as you send those and you post that stuff online, you've got friends and family and, hopefully potentially outside sponsors that are going, hey man, like we want to be part of that too. Or as you're trying to get a sponsorship, you can show them those quality pictures and, an award, and it's visible. You can see it, so you can see a return. So man, it's really cool to see kind of the progress that you and your team have put together over the last couple of years. And then, the EDT channel and Eric, and kind of, not saying, hey man, I'm going to take this over and bully you out. It's like, hey, let's partner together. Let's help each other out here.
Then what's that do? It brings live exposure to people who aren't able to go. If we're not able to go to every race, we're able to tune in and see what's going on. And on top of that, the YouTube channel gives exposure. And it's like, as you're talking to, tons of people follow your YouTube channel, but I know that I share that a lot at my job. I'm like, yeah, I'm involved in this ATV racing world. And they're like, well, what's that about? I'm like, well, let me just show you. So I go over to EDT Racing Channel and just kind of show them what it's about. And it highlights, 6-wheelers and 3-wheelers, the pro class, the youth, the amateur, the women, everything's on there. And these people are just like intrigued. It's just that quick. You're able to give exposure to sport that otherwise you wouldn't be able to. So it's a really, really unique platform. But Shawn, you kind of hinted at something just a little bit ago, and we've kind of been holding off on the EDT world of sharing this news. But I know that you've been working a massive deal, a massive sponsors coming into our industry, and so you want to go ahead and share that with us?
Yeah. So as we get more exposure there, I sometime during the off season, I probably sent out about 100, 200 emails, phone calls, just reaching out to everybody. You just shoot for the stars and see what sticks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody from Monster Energy to Joe's Quad Shack, who has a little small business, everybody. And one of the bigger names that's in our sport was Motorsports, and reached out to them. The next thing I know, I got an email. I said, hey, can we set up a conference call? I'm like, okay. So set up a conference call and started developing a program. And it just some of them just showed up. We got probably about $30,000-$40,000 in vouchers to give away this year to use for which is tremendous. And they're going to do a lot of other stuff. You're going to start seeing a lot of displays. So they're probably the biggest company in our sport in off-road racing, I would think. You go to their, they sponsor everything from everywhere, and they were looking for a bigger market series to jump on, and they chose us. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was pretty cool that here we are 10 years later, and instead of being the kid in the back, pushing the back of the shop, we're in the front, and they're looking at us. So
motosport.com, dude. That is too cool. Yeah. The last time I can really remember them having a footprint is when they were part of Tim Farr's program, and when he was with the Factory Honda. So it was a partnership, Factory Honda and motosport.com, huge in our industry. And that's a huge dollar amount that you're going to be spreading up across the whole market of the NE-EDT racer. That's super cool.
Yep. So it's a lot of things that'll just kind of help, like I said, offset those costs for the riders. And because everybody, you got to buy stuff. So it was a pretty cool deal. And it's actually going to help on the other end just because the costs have gone so much. There'll be a little bit give back on their end too. Just to keep this thing going, it's just gotten just silly expensive. And like anything, you're trying to retain costs. So I'm like, I got to find something that's going to generate some backflow revenue, and there's just started negotiating that with them, and it's awesome. So kind of saving the sport, but at the same time we've got a gigantic gigantic new sponsor I'm really excited about. So
yeah, that's something to brag about, man. That is so cool to see, like a top tier. Like you turn on Supercross on a Saturday night, they've got commercials running, and that, something like that
Yep.
wants to partner with us, the EDT world. Like, that's super exciting, man. So that'll be cool so what will that look like? Will it be, a whole shot award? Will it be, hey, the top 2 get a gift card? Like, can you speak to that a little
pretty
bit?
much, the way we talked about it is basically everybody that enters a race, there's a $20 gift card. So, you show up, there's right there, right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, we had something similar with Rocky Mountain, but it was like you had to do online. It was a little bit different. It was really, and there were steps. And here we're just going old school. I said, just give us a card. Don't make it complicated. They're just giving us gift cards. We hand them out, and then we can use them for anything. And there'll be some bigger ones that we're going to use later, probably at the banquet. I mean, some significant ones.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just have to figure that out. Announce that later. Giving us a lot of signage, from tents to flags to everything, to really, professional look.
Yeah,
and it's
increasing the
those guys,
production.
probably they're even looking to. They might even show up at an event. They're talking about their rep coming out. And I said Pine Lake would be the cool one. So
oh yeah. Well, we'll be there
have
too.
Those guys come out walking around is and just kind of picturing. And of course, you want to bring them to the bigger one. You want to say, hey, this is the one to come to. They see something like that. It could open up some stuff. Like I tell, right, like the program, like, pay attention to who's there. Can really open up the market. So if they're there and they see something, it's potential they could look at someone and say, hey, you know what? Let's look into this guy and put him, like Tim Farr getting behind him.
Yeah.
Or doing something to help him out. So,
man, that is so exciting, Shawn. And it's cool to see that. And what I love is, like, you keep reaching. It's not like, hey, okay, we've got this thing, put it on autopilot and walk away. Like, you're, okay, what's the next thing I can go after? What's the next thing, man? That is so awesome, dude. So cool to see, and to see a giant corporation like Motorsport, Motosport, not Motorsport, but Motosport, come on board, man. That's got to be a great feeling, man. So congratulations for that.
Yeah.
It's gonna be exciting.
Really cool.
Good stuff. So.
Hey, Shawn, so I know if we can get individuals like this, like we've got this great sponsor that's stepping up, that's partnering with the series, that obviously shows that there's something cool going on here. But if we can ever get those people to the races and show, like, the special thing that we have, like the special family, this place that we use as an escape, where we have friends from North Carolina and Pennsylvania and Arkansas, and just like all over, you kind of come together and you're a big family, even though you compete on the racetrack. But just kind of expounding on that a little bit, I want to pick your brain. What is something you think is unique or special about this community? Like, when people come, what is something that they notice that just captivates them? Maybe it's the racing. Maybe it's something that takes place off the racetrack. But what's something that you think is special or kind of captivating and unique about this community of ATV racers?
I think it could be wrapped up in a story to kind of give you an idea what ATV TT racing is. So in 2015, we had a battle for the Pro Championship, and it was very, very tight. At that time, Brian Ace, very good friend, was running, and him and Chucky were right neck and neck for the Pro Championship. We had a track in Pittsburgh. A week before that race, Chucky's trailer was broken into, and both of his pro quads were stolen. So he had no quads. Him, Andrea, everything was gone. God. He had nothing. So here's Brian Ace. All he had to do was go out there and race. And Chucky was his competition. And if you miss one race in the pro ranks, that's pretty much it. Right. Especially when you're consistently running up top. So Brian Ace is the one that reached out and offered his quad. He had two quads identical. He said, come race my quad. So Chucky showed up. Chucky finally broke and showed up. He was running Maxxis at the time. So actually, Brian Ace was I think, running Maxxis too. He was sponsored by them. And actually got on a quad. They raced, and Chucky was in front of Brian during the pro race, which I thought was comical, because that was my gig at Brian. I was like, what did it feel like to look at your quad in front of you? A different angle.
Right.
But to see something on that level, just willing to go out and help your competitor, and it didn't matter. You know, he won. That's great. There wasn't no pouting or what and everything, and he would do it again. If the next race came, hey, you still didn't have a quad together, just race mine again. And it could probably have, and Chucky ended up winning the championship. And that might have been the difference right there at that race. And that shows you what we have in the sport. It's really, really cool. You know, we're competitors on the track, but off the track, you see a lot of family. Like Pine Lake, you'll see that at night. Everybody's laughing, drinking, having cookouts. You don't see that. You go to a motocross race, they'll push each other over. You know, that on a motorcycle, that probably would have never happened. They're like, hey, that's my opportunity to win a championship. This is great.
Yeah.
You know, sharing parts, helping each other out, you know, riding quads. How many times have you seen another rider riding a different quad because his blew up? It's really, really neat. And when you pay attention, it's neat because Tate, you know, you see someone from Hoosier coming, and then we had AJ coming from 110%. And he was just blown away. He's like, man, I've never seen it. This is really, really cool. It's like a family.
That's exactly what it is. And it's one of those things too, like you can, you know, we did a pod one time talking about, you know, like just healthy competition. And that's the thing that I think this sport shows is, I mean, you can be fierce competitors on the track and compete. But you also know, like, hey man, I rode here with that guy. Like, you know, I'm not going to put him into the wall or anything like that, you know, and it's just cool to see that you can have this unbelievable competitive sport, and then afterwards, you know, guys can be cordial, they can talk, and you know, when someone gets in a jam, like, hey man, I broke a clutch lever. Oh, here, take this one. You know, it's a really, really unique thing, and I think you know, we need to just keep doing what we do to showcase that and bring other people on board to go, hey man, this is a great family, you know, friendly sport that you can get into. I mean, it's going to cost a little bit, but it is absolutely worth it. I
mean, you just look at Brad Rowley, probably he'll go down as probably one of the best TT. I mean, when you have Shane telling that this is and he actually builds a bike, maintains it, and takes care of it, and has a rider, Aaron Medlin, riding his own quad.
Yeah.
And those guys battle it out on the track.
Yeah, his top competitor. Yeah.
And who does it? You know, that's his bike that Aaron's on. And you know, you don't see that too often, you know, in too many other sports.
It is cool to see, that's for sure, you know, and it's unique, you know, and I think guys realize, they're like, okay, at the end of the day, like, yes, we're racing for a championship. Like, yes, I want to put my sponsors on top, but at the end of the day, we've got a lot more seasons ahead of us than just this one. Like, I like it that they don't look at it in a vacuum. You know, they're trying to think down the road. Like, I need this competitor to be here next year. So, you know what? I need to do what I can now to help them out. So it's so cool to see, and to see how it's grown over the last, you know, 10 years, because I mean, that was one of the reasons, you know, we kind of moved over to the cross country world, was we could race a whole series and never leave the state, you know, right here in Arkansas, you know, maybe dip into Missouri or Oklahoma a little bit, Shawn. But, you know, when we got to looking like, man, we're going to have to travel 15 hours, you know, all this other stuff, or we could race right here in our own backyard. You know, that's what kind of drew us to it. But the atmospheres at a cross country race, it's just a little bit different than a TT race, because when you go to flat track, man, you're there. I mean, you're setting up tents and campers, and I mean, you're moving in for the weekend, you know, and it's just special, man. And that's one of the things that I noticed, you know, coming back a couple years ago, was that atmosphere and how much I truly missed it.
It is a great atmosphere.
Oh,
there is no doubt about it.
Nothing
you
like
pull
it.
in, and the vibes from top to bottom, from start to finish, are just everyone having a great time. I mean, the 50th was a special event, and I know, Shawn, that you worked your butt off, that Bud did as well. A lot of people went into getting that event going, but I mean, go down as the greatest event in history, really huge. But not just the numbers of racers, but just the number of people that chose to attend and just had a great time at a memorable event. And just incredible.
Yeah, there was a big weekend, lot going on, and it kind of worked out perfect. You know what? You go to Pine Lake, you expected rain, and I'll be honest with you, by Sunday I was drained. I'm like, okay, let's get the rain.
Yeah, come on with it for sure.
just get it done and over with. But it was a perfect weather, perfect weekend, and it was kind of really neat. It took years to build up to that point because it was probably about 16 after 15, and Bud had his best numbers at our first race than he's had in years. Yeah. She's like, okay, this is going to work. We're in. We're good. And then 16 and 17, we started really working on the 50th, doing stuff to get to 19. So it was years in process.
And now we're coming up on the 55th running. We're looking forward to it, and got some special stuff in store. We're, us Remain in the Race guys, we're going to be there and hopefully bring something pretty cool to the race that hasn't happened yet.
It's a neat event for the sport,
Yes.
And brings in right when we're there at the 50th, and you see all different from different aspects of our sports, motocross. Joel walking around checking it out. There's a bunch of different guys showing up that were at that event. It was kind of neat. And then we hopefully see that, at our July races. We try to work with motocross to kind of coordinate that event so it doesn't cross over. So it allows, us to go. And it's kind of neat with Briarwood, just talking to Osborne. Great. I can't say enough great about that family.
Yes.
What he's doing that Legends race in the motorcycle. I was like, that's just awesome. That's just good stuff. Yeah. He's a good guy, and we're talking. So maybe we'll be going to Briarwood soon on the TT side. So just keep that in the back of your thoughts.
Right. Hey, great family to work with. We will be there, Super D.
Oh, yeah.
We go to Briarwood. We're going to make it happen. We'll be there. So,
sounds good. Let's go.
Super cool.
Yep.
Well, Shawn, man, we appreciate you for your time, man. Great stories shared. You're doing a great job with this sport. Man, just keep up the good work. Again, we appreciate you for your time. And thank you for joining us here on Remain in the Race.
Yep. Appreciate it.
All right. That's Shawn Robinson. So, hey, we're going to catch a break here real quick, and we'll be right back. Man, I want to give a big shout out to Shawn again for giving us some time. This morning, we're recording this on Saturday, February the 17th. So, want to give a shout out to him. Man, dude, Mitch, it is so cool to see because TT flat track racing was going away. No doubt about it. I mean, it hadn't moved out, but it had packed the suitcases and was on the porch. I mean, it was ready to be done. And then to see, him, he's like, hey, I want to do this for my foster kids, I mean, they're his kids, they're his sons, and for him to just, jump in, and it's one of those things, if you're willing and you have the time, well, you're in charge, and he's really taken off and run with it. And I love the model and the concept they're using, and the sports, it's been a slow kind of grind the last 5-10 years, but it's making it's doing well. It's doing really, really well, and it's exciting.
I think that's really
where a little part of it,
where it started to trend up. I think maybe back in 2010, 11, 12 is where it trended down. To maybe 15 or 16, and then you see this sweep back up of the sport. Even on our local capacity, like it had kind of gone away, and now there's a good following. Yep. Not a lot of tracks. I mean, couple tracks going on.
Yeah.
But it's kind of that way, nationwide now, or at least on the East Coast. I'm not as familiar with what's going on in the West.
Right.
But east of the Mississippi, there's a lot more going on.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's kind of hard to run a racetrack. I know that from, my family running one.
Yeah.
And not only the cost, but the time. I remember Dad before the Nationals for 2 straight weeks. I don't think he would sleep. It was just constantly working the track, watering it all night, making mowing, weed eating,
everything,
having staffing there. It is, a lot of time commitment, but a lot of money commitment. But here Shawn's got this philosophy and says, hey, I've got a philosophy that says your time is going to be well invested and it's going to be worth it.
Yeah.
Another thing that I really, I'm kind of hanging on was it was really cool that, as Kyler and Cody became part of their family, they're like, we want to get these kids involved and give them purpose really in life.
Yeah.
and just trying all those different things, and Kyler being like, sports just aren't my thing, but then just see him come alive on the racetrack there between, sitting there between Shane and Timmy, and just like locked in, like, this is my thing.
I love that. Yeah.
It's super cool. And then just to hear Shawn say that he realizes that everything happens for a reason, talks about kind of breaking himself up, and probably at that point in life thinking, is this really a smart decision?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah. Why am I doing this?
Why am I doing it?
Yeah, absolutely.
But then, had that event never happened, where would the NE-EDT be now?
Yeah.
I mean, you really think about it. So yes, it definitely, everything happens for a reason. I'd heard, I think it's Andy Stanley stated before, that wise people realize life is connected. That one decision leads to a next and next and next. It's not, you're not just one individual, but there's like kind of a domino effect of everything that happens in life.
Yeah. And, you saying that back, I guess it was mid-December, I lost a student. He was involved in just the craziest hunting accident, just weird situation. And he was a young man, grew up. I had him 7th through 12th grade, still talk to him. He was fixing to finish college with his master's degree. I mean, awesome young man. And so going into Christmas, there's just this tragedy just hanging over us. And it's like, man, what are you doing? And then here the last couple of months to see kind of the change in his mom and dad and things that they're doing now, and just some little things. My point is, Mitch, everything happens for a reason.
Absolutely.
I don't think that it was meant for or that God killed Jackson or took his life or anything like that. But I think it's one of those things that we have to hold on to. Like, hey, there's other things going on than just this one situation, and Shawn, he kind of shares into that, and to see the way that Jackson's life impacted so many people, I mean, it's just been cool to see what others have done with that. So it's definitely a kind of a weird thing, it's kind of hard to talk about, but yeah, I'm in that same boat too. I think everything happens for a reason, and it's one of those things. There's times where you want to when something doesn't go your way, you really want to get fired up and angry about it. But I have to tell myself, hey, take a back seat. What's the bigger picture happening here?
And the bigger picture is that God's in control, and He's the one that controls our destiny. So He's got a plan and purpose in everything. If we're if we're aligning ourselves and following His will, we'll find that. We'll find that purpose, right? I mean,
absolutely.
The first purpose is to have a relationship with Him through placing our faith in Christ. But second to our faith, that's going to lead to works or a change in action. We see how he kind of shared that story with Brian and for Chucky and sharing their machine. Yeah. Or, we think of Brad with Aaron. Yeah. Those are guys who are living out like those good things that we're supposed to. Like it's faith first. It's faith in Christ. But that's going to lead us to action and doing something, realizing that the decisions and things that we make the things we do have a bigger impact rather than the things we accomplish, right?
Right.
Like, I mean, it's going to have a more lasting impact on somebody, what you do for them rather than the things that you've accomplished. And I think we can look over in the book of James for some instruction on this. But James 3 says, if you are wise and understanding God's ways, prove it by living an honorable life, doing good works, with the humility that comes from wisdom. So do something good, right?
Right.
And then he goes on to expound that wisdom is first from above, right?
Yes.
So it comes from God, right? That's where true wisdom, which leads to peace-loving, being gentle at all times, willing to yield to others, full of mercy and fruits of good deeds, shows no favoritism, and is always sincere. So where is our source of learning how to be wise and live out those wise things and to yield to others and do good for others? Well, it comes from God. I mean, innately there is good in people, and we know how to look out for our fellow man, but to truly have it to its fullest extent, we got to be connected to the Creator, the person who knows, the being that knows how we're designed to perfectly operate. And that's God the Father.
Yep, I tell anytime I get the opportunity to speak, I always try to tell students, adult, whoever, I say you were created on purpose for a purpose.
That's right.
And you're wired uniquely the way you are for a reason. Okay, so get in tune with the person that designed you the way that you are, and you'll discover really what your true purpose is and why you are wired the way you are.
Yep.
And a couple of chapters before that, one of my go-to verses when I was in middle school, high school, it seems like every phase of life, this same passage speaks to me. But again, James, good old James, brother Jesus, he says, it's chapter 1, verse 19, he says, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. And I'm like, but
how many times do I do that wrong?
And the lesson I used to go along with that is how I did those three things backwards.
Yes.
I would get mad first, and I would tell everybody what I thought, and then I would listen to them. And James is going, I don't think that's the way God kind of designed it.
We need to reorder that.
Yeah. So,
Absolutely.
good stuff, man. Episode 43, another hot one.
Another good one. An ATV Racing Life. Man, I'm just loving how the stories kind of come together and developing. So it's good stuff, Super D. I'm glad to be here for the ride.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, how about you close us out, and we'll put a nice little bow on 43 and start preparing for 44.
All right. Father God, we thank you for the life you've given us, God. We thank you that we can have a relationship with you through faith in your Son, Lord. I thank you that you connect us one to each other. I thank you for this community of racers and how you connect us with each other and how we just feel life in that, God. We pray that you will just work in and through us to bless each other and to point each other back to you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, hey, that's a wrap on episode number 43, and we'll be back here in a couple of weeks. So thanks again for listening, and we will catch you in the next one.